Hey y'all, it's your girl Lori J, Lori Lorijay on Twitter and Instagram, coming back to you with another episode of 38 and Dating. First of all, I just want to say thank you to everybody out there in the podcast listening land for listening, supporting, subscribing, rating, and reviewing this podcast. And if you haven't done so yet, please rate and review it on whatever platform you're listening to. I so appreciate seeing the comments. I appreciate all the text messages for those who have my number and the emails of everyone just saying how much they love this podcast. So thank you for your support, and please share it with your friends, family, or anybody that you think would like to listen. So let's get into it. This one is called Dating Like a Boss, Bawse, because that's what we have to do these days. So how is it being 38 and dating and trying to date like a boss? And when I say trying to date like a boss, I mean using the same skills that have made you successful in the workplace and using those in dating. I talked about it in a couple of episodes before, and it's interesting because my friend Nadia always said to me, why don't you just date the same way that you do business? And I was like, aha. You guys remember Coming to America when he goes, aha. Okay, if you don't get that joke and you've never seen it, shame on you. Go watch it right now. Anyway, so I implored her. I said, Nadia, what do you mean? And she said, you are very firm in what you want and what you need from somebody that's pitching you business or somebody you've contracted to do business with you. But when you're dating, you shrivel up, for lack of a better word. That's a horrible visual, but she was saying that, I am more of a passenger, which, I mentioned in the last podcast, being a passenger versus being a co-pilot in your relationship. Definitely be a co-pilot. Being a passenger sucks, and you shouldn't just go along with the flow along just because. You have desires, needs, wants, and yours are just as valid as your dating partner's. So, how do you date like a boss? Well, first, I'm going to tell you the warning signs to look out for when dating like a passenger. So some of the warning signs, some people call them F-boys these days in terms of the guys who aren't serious. I'm not going to call them F-boys. I'm just going to say the dudes that ain't serious or ain't really checking for you. And hey, not every dude needs to be checking for you, right? Sometimes you just want to go out with somebody and have a good time and have no strings attached. Sometimes you just want to be taken out and treated like a lady or a man, if you gentlemen out there like to be taken out. And sometimes you don't want anything other than someone to just show you a little affection and to tell you that you're great to be around, right? But then other times you kind of want to see where something can go. So the warning signs of the dudes who ain't really checking for you, even if you think they are, because a lot of times as women, or let me just speak for myself and not all women, a lot of times for myself, I'll think, oh my God, I just had a great time and he's really into me. And dude ain't checking for me. I know, hard to believe, right? Just kidding. But seriously, sometimes women, we can gas ourselves up in our own head and think that a dude is super checking for us just because he spent a little bit of time with us. And one of my good girlfriends, I'm going to call her C, because if I say her name, it's such a unique name, you'd know who she is. And I'm not sure she wants to be shouted out on this podcast. But one of my girlfriends, C, told me one time about this guy I had dated. She said, don't be giving him all kind of props for stuff that he should be doing. And I was like, It's like, oh, but he picked me up and took me out. She's like, yeah, that's what he should be doing. And it was such common sense advice. I was like, oh, damn, I guess you're right. I was like, but he was so sweet to be at my event and to support me. And she's like, that's what he should be doing. Now, this woman is married with kids, so I trust her advice. And she's super, realistic, straightforward, not a beat around the bush kind of girl, which I love. So thank you, C, for that advice. That totally helped me in that situation. But anyway, back to the warning signs. So the warning signs when a guy isn't really checking for you, which will ultimately help you date like a boss because you'll be able to recognize these signs. And these are the signs that I spotted and I realized in my life. Is the first one is his friends always gas you up about spending time with him, but he never pushes for commitment. So that's interesting, right? It's kind of two parts. So let's say you're dating a guy. I'll go out there and say I was dating a guy and we have to give him a name. Let's see. What name can we come up with to protect the quote unquote innocent? Let's give him the name of Charles. So I was dating Charles and we weren't officially dating, first of all. We were friends and we had known each other for a while. I had known him in school. And, years later, we just, ran in the same circles, saw each other a lot. We were always really cool friends. And we liked each other. But he had a girlfriend, I had a boyfriend, so nothing ever transpired. And I assumed that he and his girlfriend went on a break. I ended up breaking up with my boyfriend. And there was this gap where we could actually talk, right? So, of course, we ended up dancing one night and it was a great time. And we realized that, we really did like each other. And so anyway, every time he would ask me to come out, I would go just because it was fun. We were friends already. We had the same kind of friend group. It was cool. But on the side, his homeboys would be gassing me up. This one particular homeboy, let's call him, oh goodness, I'm running out of names, y'all. Let's call him Phil, right? So Phil was always gassing me up like, yo, you gonna come hang out with Charles? Yo, he wants to see you. Yo. But Charles was cool and all, but he was never really pushing for anything more than us to just like each other and kick it, right? So I would gas myself in my head like, oh my gosh, this is great. It's, a time where Charles and I can finally talk. But his friends were always gassing me to come out somewhere, be somewhere. But he really wasn't. I mean, he wanted me to come. He would ask me to come. But his friends were like a little overly eager, specifically Phil. So if you see somebody gassing you up, the friend's gassing you up, but yet, oh boy is never really pushing toward anything, never trying to grow anything with you. He ain't really checking for you, boo. This is my version of He's Just Not That Into You by Greg Bernhardt. That was a great book, great movie. He's just not that into you. I'm going to say he ain't checking for you, boo. Maybe I should write a book about that. He ain't checking for you, boo. And other lessons from dating. Oh, please tell me if you would read that or pick that up. Anyway, so that's warning sign number 1. Warning sign number 2, he always calls you last minute for dates. Again, I know I stressed this in the last one with the militant, but a dude should actually plan in advance to take you out. Like it shouldn't just be, oh, spur of the moment. I happen to be somewhere already. Why don't you come? That's another one, y'all. If they're already out and they just call you while they're out to come join them, they ain't checking for you, boo. They are not checking for you. It might be a fun time. And have I gone out? Yep. I met Charles out several times to go kick it with he and his friends. But he ain't really checking for you, boo. I wish I had that voice back then saying that to me like a little grasshopper on my shoulder. Say, girl, Have you ever had one of those moments where you realize like, okay, this is fun. And then later you're like, oh. It took me a long time to have that oh moment with Charles. So that's the second warning sign. If he calls you super last minute or while he's already out enjoying his time, and especially if this happens all the time and not just like once in a while, once in a while, cool, no problem. He's just doing something like you'd like it. Awesome. But if it's every time, he ain't checking for you, boo. All right. Another one is, and this will be my last one, maybe. There's too much irony, right? In the relationship or dating situationship, whatever you want to call it. And what do I mean by irony? I remember distinctly with Charles, we were out at an event and, he knew a lot of prominent people because of his job. And we were out celebrating something or the other. And we were in a huge hotel suite. There were like 20 or 30 people in there celebrating. And, I'm a free agent. And so while being a free agent, I'm like, I talk to everybody. I'm just a friendly person. I'm outgoing. And ladies, if you are outgoing and somebody is trying to check for you, trust, he notices if you're outgoing with other guys, whether it's harmless or not. So anyway, I'm in this group of like 4 or 5 people. And there's this guy there who's also a good friend of mine. And, I actually didn't know him as well as I knew Charles, but this guy was low-key flirtatious with me. So he would put his arm around my waist and I'm talking to him and I'm smiling, laughing, totally not trying to be a ham on purpose. That's just who I am. And so Charles is across the room He's across the room drinking some kind of dark liquor and like eyeballing me hard. And I say hard like that because that's how it was. It wasn't hard. It was hard. Okay. He was eyeballing me from across the room. And I noticed it, but I didn't pay any attention to it because I'm like, what? Like, like we cool. And so anyway, so I'm talking to the guy and Charles kind of moseys over and he gets a little closer, but still not within reaching distance. Right. And so I'm laughing, talking with the group, talking with the guy friend. And all I hear all of a sudden is Lori. And I literally look like, what in the hell just happened here? What? Like, who in the world just said my name? Of course, I knew who it was. It was Charles. And I just looked at him quizzically like, dude, like, what are you doing? And I didn't say anything, but I was just like, okay. And he did it to like get my attention, shock me, whatever. But I'm just sitting here like, dude, like you put no claims on me, so it's all good. So when I say the irony, I mean, how am I getting checked or he's trying to check me and we ain't together? Like that's ironic. Like we're not together, but you're trying to check me. The irony, right? So a little bit later, funny enough, Charles gets closer. And I'm still talking to this guy friend, this mutual guy friend of ours, and several other people, like 2 or 3 other people. And all of a sudden, maybe he had a little too much to drink. But all of a sudden, Charles pokes me in my stomach with his pointer finger. Like, ee-hee, kind of like one of those Pillsbury Dope boys. He doesn't make the noise, thank God, because that would have been weird and awkward. And I would have looked at him absolutely nutso and been like, bruh, get your hand off me. But he poked me in my belly, like almost in my belly button, just to do it. And I was looking like, are you crazy? Like, are you insane? And he did it, I have to believe, just to assert himself in that situation. Almost like, I know her better than you do. Or we're that close that I can do that, you know? And I just laughed it off. I probably should have smacked his ass, but I didn't because I'm not volatile like that. I mean, it looks fun to be volatile, but it's just not me. Like, it would be awesome to be the Rihanna type of girl who looks like she has a crazy side, but I just don't. Maybe one day, but I just don't. Anyway, so I just looked at him crazy. And I'm sitting there like, dude, like, you ain't tried to make no commitment with me. We just cooling. We're just kicking it. Like, nah, bro. Like, how are you trying to check me? And I'm still single. So anyway, if there's too much irony in the situationship or whatever it is, relationship, if you're always asking yourself questions like, how, Sway? Like, how come? Like, in what world does this happen? That's a warning sign. Okay. Somebody's expectations need to be checked. Anyway, so in seeing all those warning signs, what you have to do when you're dating like a boss is obviously not date somebody who shows those warning signs. So that's my first lesson is if you see red flags as a boss, cut bait. And you know what your red flags are. You know what they are because you try to rationalize yourself out of them. You try to say, oh, well, I could deal with that. And I talk about this all the time, y'all, because it's so real. How many times have you just said to yourself, oh, that might be a flaw, but, you know, it's not a huge turnoff. But really deep down inside, if you really asked yourself, you'd be like, hell no. Right. And maybe it's because we feel like, oh, we're running out of time, depending on what age you are. Oh, I'm running out of time. I need to find somebody, this one looks good enough, but good enough shouldn't really be what you're looking for. You should wait until you meet someone great, right? But a lot of times in dating, you don't know what great looks like because all you're getting is good enough. And if you're getting just good enough, do what you do in business. Be like, nah, go to somebody else. I'll let somebody else pitch for that piece of business. I'll let somebody else try to win over this good $30,000 project that I have, right? Because you're never going to take less than the best when it comes to money or time, right? Especially in business. So in dating like a boss, make sure that if you see red flags and really ask yourself if they are your red flags. Don't try to rationalize. If you see red flags, cut bait and run and wait for the next one, right? You're young, you're vibrant. I don't care what age you are, y'all. You know, you don't have to settle for good enough. There actually, interestingly enough, is a book about why women should settle. And I cannot remember who wrote it. It was some white woman I saw on Today's Show. And it has nothing to do with the fact that she's white, maybe. I'm just kidding. But she wrote this book about how settling for Mr. Good Enough was the better option. Because then she wasn't crazed and insane. And I have no idea what all the book said because I never read it. Because that wasn't my testimony. That is not my journey. But some people do make the case for settling for good enough. And hey, if that's your trade-off and that's you, do you, boo. I'm just saying, if you're going to date like a boss, you don't settle for good enough because you wouldn't do that in business, right? So that's the first lesson. The second one that I learned is when you're dating like a boss, you communicate very clearly, right? So when I'm working, y'all know I got a big job. I'm the head of marketing for my network, and I have to be a great communicator, both up the chain and down the chain. And so in dating like a boss, use those same communication skills that you use at work in your personal life. I will be the first to admit that a lot of times in my personal life, I nut up and I don't communicate when I'm upset or when I'm sad or, bothered. And I think it's because I don't want to rock the boat. And it comes across as if I'm okay with everything. But what I'm really doing is walking on eggshells because I'm just so scared that it's going to rock the boat and then things will fall apart. And I don't know where that comes from, honestly. I guess it probably comes from, being a child of divorce. My parents are divorced and I never wanted to be divorced. And I still don't. I never want to be divorced. That's just me. Now, if you're divorced, then you've obviously taken the leap to be married, which is kudos to you. And you probably gained some very great insight and lessons. Again, kudos to you. You use that to build upon. I don't think anybody goes into marriage wanting divorce unless you were just too scared to speak up. So I'm not saying that as a knock to divorcees. I'm saying that as when you start down the path of, hey, I want to be married to this person, I'm pretty sure you're not thinking, hey, I actually want to divorce him in 5 years, but I want to get married today. Okay. So in terms of communicating, I probably saw it or see it as, the first tumbling block in the set of blocks. And if you communicate your frustration so often, you never know how the other person will react. And I don't think that I'm particularly scared of their reaction in the moment. I think I'm more so nervous. Usually I'm thinking about, in previous situations. I've always been nervous about, let me see. I'm trying to be really honest here, you guys. I'm literally thinking of the conversations my sister and I have had. I probably am nervous about how that reaction will affect the relationship, and will they pull back, and will they want to leave, right? And even if the relationship is not 100% perfect, for some reason, I just never want that kind of discord. But I've learned in dating like a boss to communicate clearly and communicate more often. And I am proud to say that I do that. I'm not perfect, but I do it a lot more. So when you're dating and trying to date like a boss, be upfront, be clear, be concise, get your point across, and do it in a way that that person can truly receive what you're saying and understand it versus a hot-headed reaction, right? Because I don't know about you, but I am not here for any hot-headed reactions. Let me tell you, if you are hot-headed and have an emotional roller coaster type personality, that is not for me. But anyway, so communication, again, is key. And someone really important to me said, when there are two givers in a relationship, it can be difficult because you have to make sure that you're communicating your needs. And I think that piece of advice is really dead on. Communicating your needs and your desires, or when something bothers you, is really important. And I've learned that and continue to learn that as I continue dating, because it's true. We all deserve to be happy, and we all deserve to get the things that we need and want. And let me tell you, I have plenty of married friends who are not necessarily getting what they want when they want it. And I know that you don't get it all the time, right? There's compromise, there is sacrifice, there are all kinds of things in relationships, and especially marriage. But I know that their needs are probably not being met for partially a lack in communication or partially a lack of understanding on their partner's part in terms of understanding why this is such a need. And you know what? When you get married, there are trade-offs, I'm sure. I got to get some of my married friends on here to talk about this. Maybe they'll come on anonymously so their spouses don't hear this and say, why are you telling our business in the street? Anyway, so communication is key. That's the overall point there. And then third is when things are going well and going right, you praise that person and you praise the relationship and you enjoy that moment, right? So everything in dating doesn't have to be this huge analysis in the moment, right? You should really go with the flow. That's one thing that I have learned and continue learning. Go with the flow. Enjoy the moment. My Aunt C, I'm going to call her Aunt C, she always coaches me to just enjoy this delicious moment in life. Just savor it. And I love her because she's so spirited. She's so outgoing. She's so happy and bright and bubbly. And in dating, she's told me, like, just enjoy this moment. Enjoy this sweetness that you have. Be in the present. She would say, don't think too much about what's down the line. Just enjoy this right here. And thank God for my Aunt C, because she really helps keep me grounded and living in the moment and not worrying too much about the future or even the past, to be honest. And you need people like that in your life. You need people who are going to champion you, who are going to keep you grounded, who are going to shock you into remembering, sweetie, you are the prize and you deserve the best. And even though you might know all of your flaws, there's somebody out there who's going to be cool with all of your flaws and accept you and love you as is, right? And people say that all the time. But when you're dating and when you're not successfully dating because this guy didn't work out for this reason or that girl didn't work out for that reason, for my fellas, it's hard to remember that, right? Because you start to do self-analysis like, well, what happened? Well, what part did I play in that? And sure, we all have to do that. You got to analyze for yourself. But at the same damn time, know that you're a prize. Know what you're working with. And in business, I always know my value. I always know what I'm bringing to the table. A lot of times because it's money. But I have no doubt in what I'm able to offer. And you have to have no doubt in what you're able to offer as a person in a relationship or a dating situation. Know your value. Look in the mirror every day and say, look, I got all this goodness. Yeah, I got 10, 15% that I'm not really in love with, or 20%, but I got at least 80% of hot damn, I'm the bomb. And you got to coach yourself up like that. And if you can't coach yourself up, get friends, get family, get somebody to do it for you, because your loved ones know how badass you are and how much you rock, right? And even when you're in a dating situation and it ends, take it as a blessing. You know, some people say man's rejection is God's protection. I truly believe that. I am so thankful for all of the lessons that I have learned, for all the protection I've had in dating. And as I continue to date, I'm so thankful for the people that are being brought in my life, right? Because now I can apply all these lessons and learnings and insights that I've realized about myself and better ways to date. I can apply that to the future, and I'm rooting for me. One of my listeners said that she was rooting for me in love, and I so appreciate it. I think it was a woman. I'm rooting for me too, and I appreciate y'all rooting for me, rooting for your friends, rooting for your loved ones in love, right? Love is tricky, but it's also fun and exciting when you get to it. So those are my lessons in dating like a boss. Tell me what you think. Feel free to DM me. Guys, I need to get you on here. Fellas, you guys have talked to me a little bit about wanting to be on the show, so please hit me up on Instagram, Lori J, or on my email at LoriJH. That's LORIJAYH @gmail.com. I would love to have you guys as a guest on here. And ladies too. I have a few guests coming up in the next few episodes that I'm very excited about. So stay tuned and you guys will hear a lot more insight and perspectives on being 38 and dating, or whatever age my guests are. So thanks for listening. Please be sure to rate and review this podcast, if you will, please. And I'll talk to you guys next time. See you on the next episode.